This is a conversation we've wanted to have for a few years. Robert Andrew Powell is a James Beard Foundation Award winner, an American journalist who's focused on sports and food, which are two of our favorite things here at Protagonist. Robert has written for the New York Times, Slate, Mother Jones, and the Miami New Times. He's also the author of We Own This Game, a season in the adult world of youth football, Running Away, and This Love Is Not for Cowards, Salvation, and Soccer in Ciudad Juárez, which is what we'll be discussing today. Robert, welcome.
Happy to be here.
Well, I'll tell you, when we first announced that we would be rereading this book, and that we would have the opportunity to speak with you about it, the response on all of our social media platforms was entirely positive.
Okay.
It's well known and well received book in our soccer circle. And one of our first topics we always like to ask our guests is how did they fall in love with the sport? Did you fall in love with the sport? Because from the book, you seem familiar with the terms and the game itself, but what was your soccer origin story before you ever decided to attach yourself to Los Indios?
I uh I'm of the generation that sort of started it in America. I was 7 years old. I was living in Dover, New Hampshire, and I saw some kids playing soccer, and so I joined them with my blue jeans and practiced in my blue jeans and joined the team. This was long before it was sort of the American norm. And I liked it and I stuck with it. And at one point in high school, I had to choose soccer or baseball. I chose soccer, and my dad was heartbroken because he didn't understand what soccer was at that time. And then, I played Division III. I played through college. But even when I was in college, it was very hard to watch soccer. There was very little soccer available. In the newspapers, they would make fun of you if you like soccer, and they didn't cover it. And now, a lot of things are worse in the world, but one of the things that's incredible is how much soccer you can watch, and it's really crowded out all my other sports. I watch soccer all the time. I didn't really endorse the Club World Cup, but it turns out I will even watch the Club World Cup. I will watch any soccer that's available. I'm watching the Women's World Cup, Euro Cup right now,
Mhm.
um, and I love it. But because of cable and the internet, um, it's really my only sport right now.
It's a familiar story, Robert. Actually,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, I'm 48, so a lot of people around our, give or take 10 years around our generation have a very similar experience with soccer. So yeah, I was actually on a show defending the Club World Cup recently with Dan.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't,
Ro-
I didn't really like it, but
it,
I
it-
still watched it.
yeah,
I-
exactly. I think that's the prevailing sentiment.
All right.
When you left for Juarez, did you go knowing that you would write a book, or did you work at it nightly with a laptop? Did you take extensive notes with a stack of notebooks? What was the initial intent? What tools did you use, and how did you adapt to your environment as a journalist?
That's a lot. I will start at
I do
some
that.
point.
I'm known for that.
Um, I did want it to be a book. Before I'd gone there, I'd worked on a book project in Colorado that took 3 years of my life and did not get published. And so I was kind of um, out of options, and I was going to return to Miami. And my friend said I should improve my Spanish before I went back. So I was going to go to Barcelona. And then I saw that it was a lot cheaper to study Spanish in Mexico. So I ended up in Puebla for just a month. But part of our job was we had to read the newspaper every day. And in the newspaper every day was stories about Juarez. And it was just insane how um, bloody it was. Just the violence, it didn't seem understandable. Um, and at the time I was rereading Joan Didion writing about San Francisco, and she'd gone there in 1969, the summer of love, um, without an objective. She just wanted to see it. And and I had that same kind of curiosity about Juarez. And so I was Googling a bit. And right before I left Mexico to go back to Miami, I stumbled onto a blog post by Marco Vidal, who's the main player in the book. And it was an American living in Juarez. There was this team named the Indios, which sounded like the Cleveland Indians baseball team. It was like, I can understand soccer, I can understand sports, but I don't know, it just set off all my spidey sense that there was something amazing. And if like Joan Didion and I just went there, it would come up. So I did go in there hoping it would be a book, but I'd gone to Colorado hoping to write a book too, and nothing had happened. But
Right.
just like I was in Colorado, I wrote every day. I made it my job, but there was no contract, there was no anything. I just went, and I'm extremely glad that I did.
You introduce us to the American transplant Marco Vidal, as you had
Yeah.
mentioned, the owner of the club, Francisco Ibarra, at the very beginning of your book. But can you tell us how you introduced yourself to the club and convinced Francisco and general manager Gil Cantu to let you peek behind the curtain?
Just by bumbling, just really bumbling. Like if I would have thought about it, it would have never worked out. But I just had gone. I had had some clips in the New York Times, and so the media people, I reached out to the team, and the media people at the team had seen the New York Times clip, so they treated me like I was a New York Times staff writer, which I wasn't. And I let them think that. And so they met with me, and I remember the first meeting. I brought this friend of a friend of a friend who was a hardcore Mexican um, worker. He didn't speak any English at all, but he was helping me out. And the meeting was just, they must have thought I was the biggest weirdo ever. But they agreed to let me follow the team because no one else was following the team. That's one of the luxuries I had, is that I was the only one there. No one was interested in this project but me. And once I got in, yeah, then people adapt and they get used to you and they see you showing up. And the first time I met Marco, I was just, hey, I saw your blog post, and um, I was hoping I could get to know you better and hang around more. And he was immediately the nicest guy, just like my casa is your casa, he told me, the classic cliche.
Mhm.
And he meant it. And I was in his life pretty hardcore, pretty quickly. And I think it helped that I was an American. He's very Mexican, but he's also very American, and so he enjoyed talking to me. And again, there was no one else around. Like it's almost entertainment that I was there, in that I was something new. And Marco was just great. He didn't have to be, and if he wasn't, I would have found something else to do. But it really worked out with him and me. Yeah.
In reading your book and your writing, Robert, you really come across as a romantic. You fall for the city of Juarez and you
Yeah.
fall for Los Indios, but you don't mention a romantic partner either back home harassing you to leave, a place that truly is one of the most dangerous places in the world at that time, or somebody that you might have found comforting to be around and spend time with. Were there opportunities for, romantic love, or was that the farthest thing from your mind as so many of these events were happening?
I consider that to be a perceptive question. Seriously. Uh, the book in Colorado, which many years ago was in the aftermath of a divorce. And so I'd gone to Colorado single, and I wasn't like celibate or anything, but I was transitioning in my life. And when I went to Juarez, I was wide open for it, but it was almost impossible. And yet at the very end of my time there, I did meet someone.
Mm.
And it's one of the, every book, every writer, I wish I could rewrite this or rewrite, like I say at the end of the book that I was thinking of staying on in Juarez, but I never mentioned, that I'd met someone that we were really grooving on each other. And that was a big factor in what I was doing, but I never told the reader that that was a factor. And so we ended up not getting married, but but she's great. Like I had a true honest relationship toward the end of my time there. And that's why the book is only 9 months, but I had a 2 year run of real intimacy. Like I left, but I came back, and I came back frequently.
Robert, I'm relocated to this area of the country. I live in El Paso.
Yeah.
I think just after your time in Juarez, I moved here in
We would have
2010.
met otherwise. I know.
I was actually
Yeah,
just telling Josh,
yeah,
like we could have run into each other here.
we
Yeah.
absolutely would have run into each
Um,
other.
but it is interesting how while so much is going on there, it is still at some level, it is still day to day for everyone there, that it becomes part
Yeah.
of the norm. And that is a very interesting aspect of both life in Juarez from people that I know that live there and also on this side of the border in El
Good.
Paso. And it's I think that it's one of my favorite parts of your book is as you write about soccer, and that is such a normal thing to be a soccer fan
Right.
even if
That's
you
exactly
are
right.
in the city. Yeah, I mean it's interesting. And even that idea of like finding someone and meeting someone and having a romantic relationship is also, that is something that all humans do
It's
Right.
human. Yeah.
regardless of the setting.
Right. I say in the book, people get married, they have kids, they send their kids to college in town.
Hmm.
And I mean, this woman I was involved with, she went to school in Juarez. That's how she ended up there. She was from Chihuahua. Um, and I blanked for a second there, but it is normal. And what you taught, soccer was something I could understand, and being a soccer fan is something that transcends languages and as we know, I just watched the Club World Cup. I didn't understand half the languages that the players were speaking, and so going into Wires, knowing this was something that I could get my head around, made everything else easier to understand. But my main objective was to understand Wires, and I
Hmm.
always viewed soccer as the vehicle to do that, and I think it was a good idea.
Well, it turned out to be a great book. So yeah, good
Yeah, it
idea.
worked out.
Thanks for doing it.
Yeah.
During their rise and brief time in the Primera, Indios employed Sergio Orduña, Hector Higuí, and of course Pep Trevino. All went on to have long careers, but none of which stayed at any single club for a very long time. Do you think a higher caliber coach could have gotten more out of the Indios in that relegation season? And of course, I'd like to double up my questions, but considering the conditions of living and working in Juarez, would a more well qualified coach even consider the position?
I think to answer your second part first, no.
Yeah.
That was the hardest challenge that they had. That Gil Cantu, the general manager, was getting talent to come to the border was a real challenge. And so it really was a team of misfit toys, including the coaches. And the coach that they had wasn't very successful, and then they replaced him with a guy who was really ambitious, and this was probably his only chance to even have a shot
Mm.
because no one else was there. Which in a way was similar to me in that I was able to do this project because no one else was interested in this project and no one else was willing to go to the border. And so in ways I identified with the players and the coaches as well.
Mhm. Uh, Juarez is easy to forget.
Yeah.
It's been 13 years since your book was published. You've mentioned that you actually had been back and forth a couple of times after the narrative of the book, but I mean, have you kept in contact with Ken Toki, Marco, Danny, Francisco? Have you had thoughts of going back again to look around?
I I I mean, I don't know how Dan feels about El Paso, but I love it. Like I really love the border. And I've made more friends in Juarez and El Paso than I had in Miami and currently have in Miami. For some reason, those friendships were sincere and they've been long lasting. And so I'm not in touch with Marco, but I know where he is, and I feel like we could talk, like if we needed to.
Hmm.
But I'm in touch with Huicho, the luchador. I talked to Sal Luna, who's probably my best friend on the team just the other day. Um, I and I feel like I know from when I've gone back that if I went back, I would be accepted immediately. Like it's one of the great things about the front La Frontera.
If you need a place to
I agree,
stay,
right? Yeah.
I've got a little a casita in the back. You're welcome to crash here. You're welcome.
I got
Uh,
many options there.
I'm sure you do. Well, whatever.
Oh, but
uh,
yeah, we'll see. We'll audition. Yeah.
but I won't take you to Chico's Tacos. However, I will not do that to you.
You like it?
I do not.
Yeah, good.
That's okay.
I feel
Um,
better about you because of that. Yeah.
well, I think one of the things that I often struggle with writing about soccer, rooting for a soccer club, or even passively watching it in the
Yeah.
modern setting is the sharp contrast between the game and the massive events happening in the world that seem to dwarf the game in
Sure.
importance.
Sure.
How can we spend time, invest time in a sport when there's so many other massive things going on in the world? And we see this even as you look back in history. Even in World War II, there was soccer going on all across Europe, even during the hottest of times.
Yeah.
What lessons did you learn from the people of Juarez who were living through really the worst of times there while still following and supporting the sport they loved? And I know we kind of hit on that a little bit earlier, talking about sort of the mundaneness of life and doing everything that you do anytime. Do you apply any of those lessons to your life with all the sort of chaos that's going on in the world now?
It's the the great lesson is how you get used to anything. And that applies right now today. Like every day now, we get a new story as soon as you wake up and you hit social media, and it's a horror. And within a week, it's become kind of the norm.
Mm-hmm.
You just adjust to it, which is horrible. I mean, I'm reading the book I'm reading right now is about Germany and how they became Nazis. Like, and it's sadly applicable. I used when I was younger, I would read about um, Nazis if it was this strange, like fiction. And now I'm reading this book and I'm like, that happened yesterday here. And um, so that in that book that I'm reading now, in the book that I wrote, in all of us in our day to day, you adapt to whatever the circumstances are, and you live. And one thing about living is you have interests and you have passions. And sports, I contend, is really important. I don't think it's frivolous at all. I don't know many things that are more important than that, although I would have a few things I would say, but I consider it a central um, um, lifeblood for me, in soccer especially. But I mean, the World Cup final, I still don't know if there's anything better that I've ever seen than that. And it got me really excited. I'm not Argentinian, and I wasn't relevant, just loved it. And I love soccer in Juarez, and it, it's a normal thing, and people are into it. And I'm not you. We are obviously into soccer. Um, so are many, many other people. And if it's not soccer, I mean, Juarez has a baseball team that has a good following, and there was theater there, which you wouldn't think. And there was a literature scene, and there's a music scene that has its own peculiar nature and is real and it's sincere. And so no matter what's going on in the world, you have to find your passion, and we all seek it out. And I'm not going to stop watching soccer, um, even though the World Cup that's upcoming is clearly going to be a dumpster fire. Like, it's going to be a disaster, and yet I'm going to watch every second of it.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll be there with you. Um, of course, now the big club in Juarez is FC Juarez.
Yeah.
But promotion and relegation are gone from Mexican football, so there's no danger of relegation now. From your time with the wild supporters of El Cartel, is this the kind of club that they would support? Is the stability comforting,
Um,
or is it not the same now?
they accept it as it is. They totally support it. It's Juarez's team, and they're Juarense, and they're on board. It's 100%. All the guys have green jerseys now, and they're in the end zone, and they're fully supportive. Um, I don't know how they feel about relegation. I found the season I was there, when they were relegated, the Indios, people on Juarez supported that. They liked the idea of relegation, even though they were going down. I mean, we like relegation too, but American sports, all sports doesn't allow for that. But I mean, I love relegation, and I do think makes things more meaningful. But they're happy to have a team, and I would be too. Yeah.
Yeah. In the decade since your book was released, things have changed somewhat in what is, at least on a surface level. Living on the border and looking, I can see it from my window. I can see across the
Yes,
border. Things have seemed to improve a bit. Certainly, it seems less violent than it was in your time there.
definitely.
I'm curious if, like, a war correspondent might romanticize their experience in a war zone. Do you look back at your time in the city somewhat romantically?
Yes,
Um,
yes,
and I'm
absolutely.
curious, how do you think that your view might be different from someone, a citizen of that city who has lived through all of this?
Um, I do romanticize it, and I understand now the appeal of war correspondent. Like I never set out to be a war correspondent, but I understand the appeal of it. Uh, my adrenaline was spiking the entire time I was there, and that's a rare feeling. And life is a lot more calm here, and in some ways that's less interesting. Um, what was the second part was
Basically, how do you think that your experience as someone that's dipped in and then come out versus, say, someone that's lived through this?
I I've been generally surprised and pleased to be accepted by Warren say that I don't even know who feel that the book is accurate and reflects that time accurately and they appreciate that I wrote it. Um, I find that in travel writing has a long history of outsiders giving the best perspective of what it's like to be there. And so, of course, someone who lives there day to day would have a different take than I would, but maybe they would miss stuff. I spoke at a class at UTEP and they were like, Juarez isn't that bad. And I understood what they were saying. I'd already been there a long time. And they're like, Juarez isn't that bad. The violence is overrated. And I asked if anyone knew someone who got killed, and everyone in the class did. And I don't, you know, like,
Mm.
and in my high school, like there was one murder in my high school, and it was weird. And everyone in that class at UTEP, which is normal people going to college in the US, knows someone who got murdered. And that's completely different. And that's how you can benefit from me being there or another outsider. And again, I go back to Joan Didion, who went to San Francisco knowing nothing, but just finding it interesting. Like I mean, Mark Twain, many writers. It's valuable to have an outsider perspective.
I have a coworker from Honduras, and she was curious about the book I was holding because the cover is so colorful, and I kind of explained the premise to her, and she was absolutely blown away. She said, there's no way that's that's nonfiction." And I said, "I know it absolutely is, and I'm going to hand her the book tomorrow when I go back to work." But and she said, "Well, how did he make it through?" And there's this there's this sort of refrain throughout the book, it's staying on the line. And I think how much of you say you don't know somebody that's been killed, how much of that, even through your time in Juarez, is because you stayed on the line. And you saw this immense amount of violence around you with bombs blowing up, quarter mile down the street, and decapitations and shootings daily. But I read this thinking, oh, well, obviously it's been published, so he made it through. But I wasn't worried for you, if that makes sense. How much of that is because you stayed on the line?
I mean, an awful lot, I think. One thing I'm going to try and address this in two parts. One is you get used to the violence, and something that just wasn't in the book that just flashed in my head as you were talking is when I left Juarez, I went to Seattle for a few months to start the writing process, and after I was there, I came back to Juarez as I was going back to Miami, and I was there for New Year's Eve, and I met a friend from the book, and we went and got coffee in the afternoon of New Year's Eve. And as we drove to the mall, there were three bodies in the street of women in the street. And it was sort of like coned off, but there was no big deal. And we just drove past it slowly. And then we turned into the mall. We got coffee. We left. They were gone. It was like it never had even happened. It's surreal to think about that. And you get used to it. Um, and the second part, again, I should be taking notes here as we talk. I lose my
Oh,
track. You had two parts. Yeah.
staying on the line and your
Oh,
safety.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, of course. But I think that's applicable to today. And as things are evolving in the United States of America, there's more of a sense of, all right, don't say anything crazy. Don't post anything on social media. Um, don't, I mean, it might get to the point where don't register for a political party. You do what you have to do to survive. And I mean, I'm reading about Nazis, and that's what you do. You like, even if you didn't believe in the Nazi party, you registered with the Nazi party and you became a Nazi because that's what it took to survive a day-to-day life. Um, and in Juarez, you did, I mean, I'm a pretty vanilla guy, really. Like I wasn't seeking out ways to get killed. Though I could have, I imagine it would have been easy to if I was suicidal. Um, so you just adapt, and it's part of it. It's again how everything becomes normal. It's relevant to today, 15 years later here in the United States.
Robert, as you were talking about that, and I know Josh was talking about that sort of that concept of, staying in your role, not stepping out, not doing anything. I was also thinking about, I can remember when I first moved here, which was at the very end of 2010, and there was a news story that a quinceañera had been happening, and gunmen went to that quinceañera thinking it was someone else and ended up killing like upwards of 20 kids, sort of randomly because they happened to go to the wrong address. And so, as much as it is true, right, that there's some safety in doing, staying within your role and keeping your head down, the randomness of the violence could
Sure.
oftentimes strike in a way that might affect you as well. And so that crossed my mind as you were talking. It wasn't to sort of counteract anyone's point, but only to say that there's another side of that too, that the
Sure.
violence, as widespread as it is and was, particularly during that time, it affected everyone regardless of your involvement.
Well, that's what I mean. Like those kids at UTEP, they all knew someone. They were
Yeah.
probably clean living. I have it in the book. I went to Marco Vidal's wedding, and one of the uncles of his bride, Danny, was like, "Look, you have to leave because if you stay, violence will find you.
Mm-hmm.
Even if, I mean, it'll find you. You have to leave." And I wasn't, I was involved, and I was looking for ways to stay. But he was sincere in telling me, like, look, my whole life is here. I don't have a choice. If you have a choice, you have to leave. And I rejected that, I mean, respectfully for a while until his point became pretty inarguable. And that's why in the book I left. I left sincerely thinking this is crazy to be there. And now I'm tempered. I mean, one of the conclusions of my book is that Mexico was going to collapse. It didn't collapse. And I don't think it will now, like I've learned. But I certainly felt that way when I left Juarez,
Mm.
that this city is fucked. Yeah.
I am I am fortunate enough to have a copy. I know
Hey,
Dan.
you're one of the
I know
rare ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I know Dan has a copy. But it's out of print. This book is out of print. There you go. Do you know, and I don't know if you do know, will this book be back in print?
Nope. I
That is
doubt it.
it.
I doubt it. It would take something really random, like someone randomly coming across it and making a movie, and that's not going to happen. It's an experience. I mean, um, people think I made money. I didn't make any money off this. There were only
No.
4,000 copies. They were printed. This had been out of print for a decade.
Yeah.
I couldn't get it translated into Spanish, even though I get emails. I still get emails saying, "Why can't I get it in Spanish?" I'm like, "You can't." And Kindle, I don't love reading books on Kindle, but that's the only way you can buy a new copy. I should have. I gave away a lot of books when it first came out, and I should have kept them because I could probably retire. Because every once in a while, I see on Amazon it's like $4,000 for a new copy.
Don't tempt me, Robert. Don't tempt
That's
me.
funny. I know. Hey, I would do the same thing. I might have to do the same thing. I'll sign mine though. I'll give it away. Um, it's I joke that you can't be a cult classic if everyone could just get their hands on it and read it.
Fair. Yeah. Have you had offers for a movie?
I sold my life story rights for $3,000, and I can say that on Jeopardy if they ever ask me for something interesting. But nothing ever got made, and
Mm.
I believe I've regained the rights to my life story.
Thank Pete.
I mean,
Hey.
it was like a real interest, but even then, for most books, nothing ever happens, and
Mm.
and there's also a temptation, like if a movie's made, that doesn't make your book good or bad, and like it just means more people hear about it. But
Mhm.
all I care about is the book, and
Yeah.
I'm proud of the book.
Are you working on anything now that you'd like to promote or that you can't even hint to?
Uh, I have lost a lot of my enthusiasm for doing this kind of work. That,
Mm.
that's the short answer. I have something that I tell myself that I'm working on. Um, I can provide evidence that I'm working on it, but I am not terribly motivated to work on it at the exact same time. It's a larger question that's irrelevant to this interview, but um, the more I go on, the less I'm interested in the work that I do. And I used to live and breathe this every day.
Mhm.
Used to be my life. You would look at me and say that I was a writer because I was writing all the time. And maybe it was a phase, and maybe I'll get back to it. But right now, no, I have nothing to promote.
Understandable. I think, yeah, Dan and I definitely go through, we cycle through motivation.
Right. No.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I want to just thank you so much for coming on, our Protagonist Book Club and discussing your book and your experiences in Juarez with us.
Yeah, of course. I have questions for you. You're in Portland?
I am 45 minutes southwest of Portland,
Where's that?
between Newburgh and McMinnville on the way to the coast. I'm in a little town called Lafayette of 2,000 people.
All right. I do not know where you live.
It's wine
I know a
country.
little bit, but yeah.
It's a beautiful part of the world. It's 78 degrees and sunny. It's got a cool breeze at night, and I'm never fearful of violence.
Yeah.
And I never take it for granted.
You were saying your soccer origin story was similar to mine. Like, well, what is your, how'd you get in that area?
Absolutely fair. I actually grew up in San Jose, California, in a
Right.
big multicultural city,
Right.
and grew up playing soccer, in AYSO and PAL, and lots of soccer as a kid, and then played high school soccer. And then when it came time to grow up, I went and tried out for MLS in the first season that it existed, for the San Jose Clash, as it were, and I got cut. I got cut on day one, in tryouts for Major League Soccer.
I
And
give you
so,
credit for trying out. I really do.
yeah,
I
few
do.
can say they at least tried.
Right.
But yeah, I saw Eric Winalda on the pitch. He blew past me, and that was the end of my soccer career. So I went and I joined the Marine Corps.
Okay. All right. Okay. I know everything about Dan already.
Yep, I'm pretty boring. It's true.
Oh, I mean, but just what you're saying with the timeline, we had to have been on the border together. It's amazing that we didn't.
I suspect. So, Robert, I'll be honest with you. I suspect you said you spoke at UTEP.
Yeah.
I think that's how I bumped into your book because I had a good friend that was in graduate school there,
Yeah.
Randall Monty. He teaches in South Texas now.
All right.
I think that's how I think he may have attended that lecture, and I think that's how I got my hands on your book originally. That's because when you mentioned that, I thought I
Face-to-face sales. That's the only way I survive.
no, I totally get it. We're all on a grind, man. I totally understand it. No, as you were talking about that triggered in my mind. I think
Yeah.
that's who introduced me to this book. And yeah, when honestly, just as we were preparing for this today, I looked at the dates and I was like, oh wow, I was just here. Like we were, I mean, we almost certainly were in the city at the same time at
Must have,
some point.
must have been.
But
And our interests would have overlapped, so we must have been.
very true. Well, uh,
Uh,
I've really enjoyed your work, and I 100% also understand burnout and
yes.
changes in perspective and motivations. Like I can speak to that with all of my. I have I have a 9-month-old right now, and she just consumes me. And thinking about soccer sometimes seems like
That
not.
could be good though, isn't it? Just to have like an all-consuming thing that's away from you.
I think it is, but it's also I have a sense of guilt in that I am not doing this thing.
Yeah, you
Uh
do.
yeah,
Drop the kid,
Josh.
drop the kid.
I just have a
Focus.
I just I feel like I'm letting people down if I don't do what I do because I don't know anyone else that's doing it. And
Yeah,
covering the level of sport that we do,
right.
sort of that, D2 down to the local amateurs, there's just no one else doing it. And if we don't do it, who does it? Robert, really, I know that I bugged you about coming on and talking to
Yeah.
us, and I know you didn't want to do a Zoom call, but I very, very much appreciate you coming on and talking to us.
Mhm.
Uh, I 100% respect where you're at right now mentally and where you're at like as far as your career, but I will tell you that this book is one of my favorites, and it's one that I oftentimes encourage and share with people because I think it's a fantastic book about an area that I love, and I think it's written by an expert that understands what makes this part of the country and this part of the world so special. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming on and talking to us because it's been absolutely fun, and I want to share the word, man. I want people to hear you talk about it because I really do think you're a fantastic writer.
I appreciate that very much. And now we can send your listeners on a scavenger hunt to find the remaining
Hey,
copies out there somewhere.
Josh found one, so it
It's like
can be
Willy
done.
Wonka's gold ticket, you know?
Well, for Robert Andrew Powell and Joshua Duder, I'm Dan Vaughn, and you have been listening or watching a Protagonist Soccer Book Club conversation about This Love Is Not for Cowards. Thank you.